If I fall tonight, remember this. I fought for peace, not power. The words of Alpha King Adrian Blackwood echoed in Clara Bennett's mind as the blood moon began to rise above the ancient forest, staining the sky with a deep crimson glow that every wolf in the territory recognized as a sign of old law's awakening. The stone circle lay at the heart of the forest clearing, a ring of weathered granite older than any kingdom or treaty, and tonight hundreds of wolves had gathered around it in silence. Clara stood just beyond the outer ring of torchlight, her breath visible in the cool night air as she tried to steady the racing thoughts in her mind. She was a scientist, someone trained to trust data, logic, and evidence measured in labs and notebooks. Yet nothing in her education had prepared her for the moment unfolding in front of her. The wolves were not hiding tonight. They stood openly beneath the sky, men and women shifting subtly with restless energy as the red moon climbed higher. At the center of the circle stood Adrian, the Alpha King, calm and still despite the weight of every eye fixed on him. Even from 30 yards away, Clara could feel the quiet authority in the way he carried himself, like a mountain that refused to move even when storms gathered around it. But tonight the storm had a name. Victor Hale stepped forward from the crowd, tall and confident, his expression sharp with the kind of certainty that only came from believing history was about to change. Murmurs rippled through the wolves as Victor's voice carried across the clearing, challenging Adrian's right to rule and invoking an ancient tradition that had not been used in decades. Clara didn't need to understand every word of their language to recognize the meaning of the moment. A challenge had been issued. The blood moon duel. The old law that no alpha could refuse. Her stomach tightened as realization settled in. This wasn't just a ritual. It was a test meant to expose something far more dangerous than defeat. Victor's eyes flicked briefly toward Clara, and in that instant she felt a chill colder than the night air. He knew something, or at least he suspected. The secret Adrian carried, the truth about his blood, about the line that connected wolf and human inside him, was the one thing that could shatter the fragile balance holding the pack together. If it surfaced tonight, the consequences would ripple far beyond this forest. Adrian said nothing for a long moment, the silence stretching as the red moon continued its slow climb overhead. Then he stepped forward into the center of the stone circle, the firelight catching the silver in his eyes as he accepted the challenge without raising his voice. The wolves around the clearing shifted, forming a wider ring as the ancient ritual space opened between the two leaders. Clara took an involuntary step forward before a large beta quietly blocked her path, shaking his head once in warning. No one could interfere, not under blood moon law. Her heart pounded as she realized how alone Adrian truly was in this moment. Victor believed tonight would prove Adrian unworthy of the crown. The wolves believed tonight would reveal the truth about their king. But Clara feared something far worse. Because if Adrian lost control under the blood moon, the secret he had carried his entire life would not stay hidden. And once the wolves saw what he truly was, the duel might not be the most dangerous thing waiting in the forest tonight. The clearing grew quieter as the red moon climbed higher above the forest, casting long shadows across the ancient stones. Clara Bennett could hear her own heartbeat as the wolves slowly shifted their positions around the circle, forming a wider ring that left Adrian Blackwood and Victor Hale standing alone in the center. The torches flickered in the night breeze, their flames bending toward the dark trees as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Clara wrapped her arms around herself, trying to steady the nervous energy building in the air. Every instinct told her this moment mattered far more than a simple contest for leadership. Victor watched Adrian with a calm confidence that felt deliberate, almost rehearsed, as though the challenge had been planned long before the blood moon ever appeared in the sky. His voice rose again, clear and sharp, carrying easily through the clearing as he spoke about strength, purity, and the ancient traditions of the wolves. The crowd responded with quiet murmurs, some nodding, others exchanging uncertain looks. Clara noticed the subtle divide forming along the edge of the gathering. Some wolves stood tall behind Adrian, their loyalty obvious in the way they kept their eyes on him alone. Others watched Victor with growing curiosity, as if wondering whether the future of the pack might already be shifting before their eyes. Adrian remained still through it all, his posture straight, his expression calm, but Clara could see the tension in the set of his shoulders. She had seen that look before, during late-night conversations when the weight of leadership pressed heavily on him. Adrian had once told her that being alpha was not about power. It was about carrying responsibility for every wolf who called the forest home. Tonight that responsibility felt heavier than ever. Victor stepped closer to the center stone, the one marked with the ancient symbol of leadership that Clara had only seen in her research notes. The moonlight reflected off the pale surface, giving the symbol an eerie glow. Victor spoke again, this time invoking the oldest law of the pack, the one that demanded truth beneath the blood moon. His words caused another ripple of unease through the gathered wolves. Clara felt a cold realization settle in her chest. This challenge was not only about strength. Victor wanted something revealed, something that could turn the entire pack against Adrian. The beta who had stopped her earlier still stood nearby, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable as he watched the center of the clearing. Clara leaned slightly toward him and whispered that this was a mistake, that Victor was pushing the pack toward something dangerous. The beta only answered quietly that once the Blood Moon challenge was spoken, no alpha could walk away. It was the law that had governed wolves for centuries. Clara looked back at Adrian, wishing she could somehow warn him that Victor was not simply trying to win a contest. Victor was trying to expose a secret. Adrian finally spoke, his voice calm but firm enough to silence the restless murmurs around the clearing. He accepted the challenge openly, acknowledging the ancient law without hesitation. The wolves responded with a low rumble of approval that rolled through the forest like distant thunder. The circle widened again, giving the two leaders more space beneath the crimson glow of the moon. Clara felt the night grow colder as the moment drew closer. She knew Adrian could face any rival with courage. That had never been the danger. The real danger was the truth hidden in his blood, the truth Victor clearly hoped the entire pack would see before the night was over. The forest seemed to lean closer to the clearing as the blood moon climbed higher, its crimson light spreading across the stone circle like a silent warning written across the sky. Clara Bennett could feel the pressure of the moment growing heavier with every passing second. The wolves had stopped whispering now. Hundreds of eyes remained fixed on the two figures standing at the center of the ancient stones. Adrian Blackwood stood with the quiet stillness of someone who had faced impossible moments before and had chosen to stand his ground every time. Victor Hale circled slowly across the smooth granite floor of the clearing, studying Adrian with the careful patience of someone who believed victory was already within reach. Clara noticed something that made her stomach tighten. Victor was not rushing. He was waiting. The realization came to her slowly, but with growing certainty. Victor was not simply here to defeat Adrian. He was here to draw something out of him. Something hidden. Something that only the blood moon could reveal. A cold breeze drifted through the clearing, stirring the tall pine branches that surrounded the gathering like silent witnesses. The torches flickered again, their light dancing across the faces of the wolves standing along the edge of the circle. Some looked tense, others curious, and a few watched with the sharp focus of leaders already calculating what the outcome of this night might mean for the future of the pack. Clara could feel the divide in the crowd growing stronger. Loyalty and doubt were standing side by side beneath the red glow of the moon. Victor finally stopped circling and faced Adrian directly. His voice carried across the clearing with calm confidence as he spoke about tradition, about strength, about the responsibility of a true alpha. His words sounded respectful on the surface, but Clara could hear the edge hidden beneath them. Victor was not speaking only to Adrian. He was speaking to the entire pack, planting seeds of suspicion in every listening mind. Adrian did not answer immediately. For a moment, he simply looked up toward the red moon hanging above the forest canopy, its light reflecting in his silver eyes. Clara had seen that look before. It was the look Adrian carried whenever the weight of two worlds pressed against his shoulders. Human and wolf. Leader and outsider. Protector and target. The balance inside him had always been fragile, and the blood moon was the one night when that balance became harder to hold. Clara remembered the warning Adrian had once shared with her during a quiet conversation near the research camp. He had told her that the blood moon did not just strengthen a wolf. It awakened instincts that even the strongest alpha had to struggle to control. And Adrian carried more than instinct inside his blood. Victor took another step forward, his gaze sharpening as if he could sense the tension building inside Adrian. The rival Alpha spoke again, this time asking a question that seemed simple on the surface but struck the clearing like a thrown stone into still water. What makes a true Alpha worthy of leading the pack? The wolves around the circle shifted again, their attention sharpening. Clara realized this was the moment Victor had been waiting for. Adrian finally spoke, his voice steady, answering not with anger or pride, but with quiet certainty. A true Alpha protects the pack before protecting himself. The answer moved through the wolves like a slow current of recognition. Yet Victor only smiled faintly, as though the words had confirmed something he already believed. Clara felt her pulse quicken. Victor did not want Adrian to say the wrong thing. He wanted Adrian to reveal the wrong nature. And under the growing light of the blood moon, that secret was becoming harder to hide with every passing second. The crimson light of the blood moon continued to spread across the clearing, turning the ancient stone circle into a place that felt older than memory itself. Clara Bennett could feel the tension building in waves around her as the wolves shifted restlessly along the outer ring of the gathering. The forest air had grown colder, and even the wind seemed to move more slowly beneath the red glow above the treetops. Adrian Blackwood remained in the center of the circle, his gaze steady as he faced Victor Hale. Yet Clara noticed the smallest change in him now. It was not weakness. It was restraint, a deep effort to keep something inside himself firmly under control. Victor appeared to notice it as well. His faint smile returned as he stepped a little closer, his boots scraping softly across the worn granite of the ancient ground. He spoke again, his voice calm but carefully chosen so that every wolf standing in the clearing could hear him clearly. Victor spoke about the importance of tradition and the purity of the pack. He spoke about the responsibility of an Alpha to carry the strength of their ancestors without hesitation or doubt. Each sentence sounded respectful on the surface, yet Clara could hear the deeper intention hidden beneath the words. Victor was not challenging Adrian only as a rival leader. He was challenging the very identity of the Alpha King. The wolves listened carefully. Some of them nodded slightly, drawn in by the certainty in Victor's voice. Others remained silent, their attention still fixed on Adrian with loyalty that had been built over years of leadership and protection. Clara realized that the entire pack stood balanced between two possibilities tonight. Trust and suspicion were standing side by side under the same moon. Adrian finally answered, his voice calm and clear as he addressed the wolves surrounding the circle. He spoke about the purpose of strength, explaining that power alone was never what made a leader worthy. Strength, he said, meant carrying the fears and hopes of the pack without allowing them to fall. A true Alpha stood between danger and the wolves who trusted him to lead them. The words carried across the clearing with quiet authority. For a moment the wolves seemed to settle, the restless shifting easing slightly as Adrian reminded them of the reason he had become their leader in the first place. Yet Victor did not appear discouraged. Instead he tilted his head slightly, studying Adrian with an expression that looked almost thoughtful. Clara felt another wave of unease rise in her chest as she realized Victor had expected that answer. The rival Alpha lifted his hand slowly and gestured toward the sky, where the blood moon now hung fully above the forest. Its red light washed over the clearing with a strange intensity that made every shadow look deeper and every movement sharper. Victor spoke again, reminding the pack that the blood moon had always revealed truth. Under its light, no wolf could hide what they truly were. The clearing grew quiet again as the meaning of those words settled over the gathered wolves. Clara felt her heart begin to pound faster. She knew exactly what Victor was doing. He was preparing the pack to watch Adrian more closely than ever before. If Adrian showed even the smallest sign of the secret he carried, Victor wanted every wolf to see it with their own eyes. Adrian remained still for a long moment, the red moonlight reflecting across his silver gaze. Then he stepped forward into the center of the stone circle and raised his head toward the sky, acknowledging the ancient law that governed the challenge. The wolves answered with a low rumble of approval that rolled through the clearing like distant thunder. Clara's breath caught as she realized the moment of waiting was ending. The blood moon had reached its highest point above the forest, and the ancient duel was about to begin. Yet the greatest danger was not the challenge itself. The greatest danger was the truth the blood moon might reveal before the night was over. The moment Adrian Blackwood stepped fully into the center of the stone circle, the forest seemed to grow unnaturally still. The wolves surrounding the clearing shifted again, tightening the outer ring until the ancient ground felt like the heart of a living storm waiting to break. Clara Bennett felt the cold granite beneath her boots through the thin layer of soil as she stood just beyond the circle, unable to move even though every instinct inside her told her to run forward and stop what was about to happen. The blood moon now hung high above the forest canopy, its red light spilling across the clearing like a silent signal that the old laws had awakened. Victor Hale stood across from Adrian with calm confidence, his posture relaxed in a way that made Clara uneasy. He did not look like someone stepping into a dangerous moment. He looked like someone who believed the night was unfolding exactly the way he had planned. A low murmur traveled through the gathered wolves as the Beta elders moved along the outer edge of the circle, confirming that the ancient law had been invoked properly. No wolf could interfere once the challenge had begun. The stone circle belonged only to the two alphas now. Clara noticed the way several older wolves watched Adrian carefully, their expressions guarded as if they were waiting for something they could not yet name. Victor slowly removed the dark coat from his shoulders and let it fall onto the grass outside the ring of stones. His eyes never left Adrian. The rival alpha lifted his head toward the sky for a moment, letting the crimson light of the moon wash over his face before he looked back toward the circle. When he spoke again, his voice carried easily through the clearing. He said that the blood moon had always revealed the truth inside every wolf. Under its light, strength could not hide behind reputation, and leadership could not hide behind loyalty alone. Clara felt her chest tighten. Victor was not only preparing for the duel. He was preparing the pack to watch Adrian closely, to question everything they believed about their king. Adrian remained still for a moment longer, then slowly removed the dark jacket he wore and handed it to one of the betas waiting outside the ring. The movement was simple, but the silence that followed it felt heavy. The Alpha King stepped forward another few feet until he stood directly on the central stone marked with the ancient symbol of leadership. The red moonlight caught the edges of the symbol, making the carved lines glow faintly, like a warning written in stone centuries ago. Clara watched Adrian carefully. She had studied enough of his world to recognize the signs of the blood moon's influence. The night air carried a strange energy now, something that stirred the instincts of every wolf present. Even from the edge of the clearing, she could feel it pressing against her senses like a distant vibration through the ground. For Adrian, that pull had to be far stronger. Victor took his place across the circle, his gaze sharp and focused. For a moment, the two alphas simply stood there beneath the red sky, neither moving, neither speaking. The wolves surrounding them grew completely silent. Even the forest seemed to wait. Clara felt her pulse pounding in her ears as the final realization settled in. The challenge was no longer just words and tradition. The moment of testing had arrived. And under the blood moon, whatever truth lived inside Adrian Blackwood would soon stand in front of the entire pack. The silence inside the stone circle stretched until it felt like the entire forest had stopped breathing. Clara Bennett could hear the faint rustle of pine branches high above the clearing and the distant call of a night bird somewhere beyond the trees, yet inside the circle nothing moved. Adrian Blackwood and Victor Hale stood facing each other beneath the blood moon, their shadows stretching long across the ancient granite as the crimson light settled over the clearing. The wolves surrounding the circle waited with intense focus, every eye locked on the two alphas. No one spoke. No one stepped forward. The law of the blood moon had taken hold. Victor was the first to move. It was not a sudden motion but a slow, deliberate step that carried him a few feet closer to the center stone. His gaze remained fixed on Adrian, as if measuring every breath, every shift of weight, every sign of hesitation. Clara felt the tension rise immediately among the wolves watching the duel. Even the smallest movement inside the stone circle seemed magnified under the red glow of the moon. Adrian did not retreat. Instead, he took a single step forward of his own, closing the distance slightly until the two leaders stood less than 10 feet apart on the weathered stone floor. The Alpha King's posture remained calm and controlled, but Clara knew him well enough now to recognize the effort behind that control. The blood moon was pressing on him. She could feel it in the air like a pressure building before a storm. Victor spoke again, his voice lower now, but still clear enough to reach the edges of the clearing. He said that leadership could never depend on reputation alone. A true alpha had to prove his strength when the pack demanded it. The wolves around the circle answered with a quiet murmur of agreement that rolled softly through the forest. Clara noticed several younger wolves leaning forward slightly, their curiosity overcoming their caution. Victor was drawing them in exactly the way he intended. Adrian responded without raising his voice. He said that strength was never about domination or pride. Strength meant standing firm when the pack needed stability the most. The words were simple, yet they carried the calm certainty that had earned Adrian loyalty across the territory. For a moment, the clearing seemed balanced between the two men. Two visions of leadership stood beneath the same moon. Victor tilted his head slightly, as if considering the answer, but the faint smile that followed revealed that he had expected those words as well. Slowly, he raised one hand toward the sky, where the blood moon burned deep red above the forest canopy. He reminded the wolves that the ancient challenge had never been only about words. Under the blood moon, truth revealed itself through action. Clara felt her pulse quicken as Victor lowered his hand again and shifted his stance, signaling the beginning of the test the pack had gathered to witness. Adrian mirrored the movement with quiet readiness, his silver eyes steady despite the growing pull of the moon's influence. The wolves surrounding the stone circle leaned forward slightly, their attention tightening like a drawn line across the clearing. Clara's breath caught as the final stillness broke. The duel had begun, and beneath the red glow of the blood moon, every instinct, every secret, and every truth hidden inside the Alpha King would be tested before the entire pack. Victor Hale moved first with a sudden burst of motion that broke the final layer of stillness inside the stone circle. The wolves surrounding the clearing leaned forward as one, their attention tightening around the two alphas like the closing edge of a storm. Adrian Blackwood shifted to meet him, his movements controlled and precise as he adjusted his footing on the ancient granite. The blood moon hung high above them now, its deep red glow washing across the clearing and turning every shadow into something sharper and more intense. Clara Bennett felt the air change the instant the duel truly began. It was not chaos or violence that filled the circle. It was pressure, the kind that made every breath feel heavier. Victor circled slowly, his eyes never leaving Adrian, as if he were searching for the smallest crack in the Alpha King's control. The wolves watched with absolute silence, their instincts focused on every step and movement between the two leaders. Adrian remained calm, shifting with quiet balance as he mirrored Victor's movements. Clara noticed the way he kept his breathing slow and steady, forcing discipline over the powerful instincts the blood moon was awakening inside him. She remembered his warning again. Under the blood moon, even the strongest alpha felt the pull of something deeper than reason. Victor spoke again while they moved, his voice calm but sharp enough to reach the wolves gathered around the clearing. He said that the pack deserved a leader whose strength could never be questioned, a leader whose nature was as pure as the traditions they followed. Clara felt a cold realization rise inside her chest. Victor was not only testing Adrian's strength, he was trying to provoke him, trying to push him far enough that the secret hidden in his blood would reveal itself under the red moonlight. Adrian answered without stopping his movement, his voice steady despite the pressure of the moment. He said that leadership was not proven by forcing others to doubt. It was proven by protecting the pack when doubt threatened to divide them. The words carried through the clearing with quiet authority, and several wolves along the outer ring lowered their heads slightly in respect. Yet Victor did not seem discouraged. If anything, his confidence appeared to grow. He moved a little faster now, closing the distance between them as he continued to circle across the center stone. Clara noticed the faint tension building in Adrian's shoulders as the blood moon climbed even higher above the forest canopy. The pull of the night was becoming stronger. She could see it in the subtle tightening of his hands and the way his eyes briefly reflected the red light of the moon. For a moment, Victor paused and looked up toward the crimson sky, allowing the moonlight to fall directly across his face before he turned his gaze back to Adrian. The rival alpha spoke quietly but clearly, reminding the pack that the blood moon always revealed what lived inside a wolf's true nature. The clearing fell even more silent after those words. Clara felt her heart pounding as the meaning behind Victor's strategy became impossible to ignore. He was not rushing the duel because he did not need to. The longer the challenge continued under the blood moon, the harder it would become for Adrian to hide what he truly was. Adrian stood firm on the center stone, his silver eyes steady despite the growing pressure of the night. Yet Clara could feel the tension building like thunder behind distant clouds. The duel was no longer only about leadership. It was becoming something far more dangerous. And under the watchful gaze of the blood moon, the truth Victor wanted the pack to see was drawing closer with every passing moment. The pressure inside the stone circle grew heavier with every passing second as the blood moon burned high above the forest canopy. Clara Bennett could feel it, in the air like an invisible current moving through the clearing. The wolves surrounding the circle had stopped shifting entirely now. Every eye remained locked on Adrian Blackwood and Victor Hale as the duel continued beneath the red sky. Victor moved with growing confidence, his steps slow but deliberate as he continued to circle across the ancient granite. He spoke again while he moved, his voice calm but edged with certainty. He said that the pack had always followed leaders who carried the strength of their ancestors without doubt or weakness. A leader, he continued, could never hide from the truth of his own nature. Clara felt the meaning of those words settle heavily over the clearing. Victor was not even pretending anymore. His entire strategy had become clear to anyone who understood the deeper tension beneath the duel. Adrian answered quietly, refusing to match the rising tone in Victor's voice. He said that leadership was not measured by pride or by the purity of blood alone. Leadership was measured by the ability to keep the pack united even when fear threatened to divide them. The words moved through the wolves like a steady wind through tall grass. Several older wolves lowered their heads slightly, as if remembering years of peace Adrian had maintained across the territory. Yet Victor only smiled faintly as he continued to move around the circle. Clara watched Adrian carefully. The blood moon was pressing harder now. She could see the signs in the tightening of his posture and the faint reflection of crimson light across his eyes. Adrian had always controlled the balance between his human mind and the deeper instincts of the wolf. Tonight that balance was becoming more difficult with every moment. Victor suddenly stopped circling and stood still in the moonlight. For a brief moment, he lifted his gaze toward the red sky before looking directly back at Adrian. When he spoke again, his voice carried clearly across the clearing. He said that the blood moon revealed the truth that every wolf carried within. No leader could hide what he truly was beneath its light. The clearing grew even more silent as the wolves listened. Clara felt her heart pounding faster as Victor took one slow step closer to the center stone. Adrian did not retreat. Instead, he stepped forward as well, meeting the movement with calm resolve. For a moment, the two alphas stood only a few feet apart beneath the crimson glow of the moon. Clara could feel the tension building like a storm about to break. Victor's eyes narrowed slightly, as if searching Adrian's face for the smallest sign of weakness. The rival alpha spoke one final time, asking the question he had clearly been preparing since the challenge began. If the pack deserved a leader whose strength could never be doubted, then why did their alpha hide the truth about his own blood? A ripple of shock moved through the wolves surrounding the clearing. Clara felt the ground beneath her feet seem to tilt as the accusation spread through the gathered pack. Adrian remained still, his silver eyes steady despite the weight of the moment. Yet Clara knew the danger had finally arrived. Victor had spoken the secret aloud beneath the blood moon, and now every wolf in the clearing was waiting to see whether the accusation would prove true. The accusation hung in the air like a sudden crack of thunder beneath the blood moon. For a long moment, no one in the clearing moved. Clara Bennett felt the entire forest grow impossibly still as Victor Hale's words spread through the gathered wolves. The question had been spoken aloud now. The secret that Victor had been pushing towards since the duel began stood in the center of the stone circle with Adrian Blackwood. A low murmur rippled through the outer ring of the pack as several wolves exchanged uneasy looks. Some stared directly at Adrian, their expressions uncertain. Others turned their attention toward Victor, waiting to see what would happen next. Clara's heart pounded in her chest as the weight of the moment pressed down on the clearing. Victor had done exactly what he intended. He had forced the secret into the open beneath the blood moon, where every instinct and every tradition demanded truth. Adrian remained completely still on the center stone. The crimson light from the moon washed across his face, reflecting faintly in his silver eyes as he looked slowly around the circle of wolves who had followed him for years. Clara watched his expression carefully. She expected anger or frustration, or even the beginning of the struggle she knew the blood moon could trigger inside him. Instead, Adrian's expression remained calm, steady, and thoughtful. Victor took another slow step forward, clearly expecting a reaction. His voice carried across the clearing once again as he repeated the question more directly. If the Alpha King carried blood that was not fully wolf, then how could the pack trust him to lead them beneath the ancient laws? The murmurs among the wolves grew louder now. Clara could see the divide spreading more clearly through the crowd. Some wolves looked uncertain for the first time, their loyalty shaken by the possibility Victor had placed before them. Others remained firmly focused on Adrian, waiting for their king to answer. The blood moon burned high above the forest canopy, its red light pressing down on the clearing like a silent witness to everything unfolding below. Adrian finally spoke. His voice was calm and clear, carrying easily across the stone circle without the need to raise it. He said that the blood moon did reveal truth, but truth was not always the weapon people expected it to be. He looked slowly around the circle again, meeting the eyes of the wolves who had stood beside him through years of peace and hardship. Then he continued. Yes, he said, his blood carried both wolf and human. The words moved through the clearing like a sudden wind across still water. Clara felt her breath catch as the admission echoed through the pack. Yet Adrian did not step back or lower his gaze. Instead, he stood taller on the center stone, the ancient symbol beneath his feet glowing faintly in the moonlight. He said that he had never hidden the truth because he feared the pack. He had protected the truth because the world outside the forest was already full of fear and division. A leader, he said quietly, was not defined by the purity of his blood. A leader was defined by the choices he made when his pack needed him most. The clearing fell silent again as the wolves absorbed his words. Victor's confident expression faltered for the first time since the challenge began. Clara realized that Adrian had done something Victor had not expected. He had taken the secret and turned it into a declaration of responsibility instead of shame. The blood moon continued to burn above the forest as the wolves stood in thoughtful silence. The duel had forced the truth into the open, but the real decision now belonged to the pack itself. And for the first time, that night, it was no longer clear which alpha the wolves would choose to follow when the red moon finally faded from the sky.